I want to get specific, Lieutenant Colonel. Tell us what's going on. You say the ceasefire, first of all, is over, right?
Well, absolutely. This organization that has, just taken advantage of the humanitarian ceasefire that Israel had agreed to carry out and indeed implemented for that full 90 minutes, but they came out of the ground. A suicide bomber blew himself up, killing 2 soldiers, and within the gunfight there, they went back down in the hole and abducted one of our boys.
And you've identified that young Israeli soldier, a lieutenant, right?
Second Lieutenant HADAR GOLDIN.
From a suburb of Tel Aviv. Where was the incident that occurred, on the Israeli side of the tunnel or the Gaza side of the tunnel?
Well, Hamas has put out a statement explaining what it says happened on Friday morning, leading to the collapse of the truce. It says that at 03:30 hours GMT, Israeli troops advanced into eastern Gaza through Rafah. At 0400 hours GMT, a firefight begins between Palestinian fighters and the Israeli army. 1 hour later, Israeli tanks advanced into the east of the strip, killing dozens of people in Rafah and Gaza. That's according to Hamas. Peter Lerner is the spokesman for the Israeli army. He joins us on the line now from Tel Aviv. Peter, why did this ceasefire break down? What was the Israeli military doing at the time in Rafah?
Well, despite what you've just reported by Hamas, which is a complete falsification and a blatant lie, the Israel Defense Forces were indeed participating in the ceasefire.
Took place within the Gaza Strip, in the areas where we were operating in recent days. Indeed, they were on defensive positions dealing with decommissioning a tunnel. This is something we said that we would be doing throughout the ceasefire, because these tunnels, as has been proven in this incident, are a serious threat. This is what they've said that they would do time and time again. This is a modus operandi of these people, and this is what we're up against.
Because they said that the agreement that was spelled out by the U.S. and the UN, the Secretary of State, said Israel had to remain within its lines, but it could go on defensively and continue the decommissioning or the destruction of those tunnels. Was that within Israel's lines, that incident that occurred where these 2 Israeli soldiers were killed and 1 Israeli soldier was captured?
Absolutely. We were operating in order to decommission these tunnels that have one goal: terrorism, death, destruction. As we've talked about several times, abduction is one of those things that they are doing. We are in a situation now where they have opened this reality, where Israel again is in a situation where we have no choice.
And about 90 minutes into that ceasefire, out comes a suicide bomber out of a tunnel, and a gunman behind him blew himself up, killing 2 soldiers. And then a gunfight, and in the aftermath of that, they've abducted a soldier. So we have now 2 dead soldiers in a ceasefire that was agreed upon by all parties, that was brokered by the United Nations and the US,
Peter,
and a terrorist organization that has attacked the IDF.
Peter, you are denying categorically that Israeli troops crossed your defensive line in Gaza.
I am saying that the IDF were in the positions, and according to the agreement, operating in order to decommission tunnels, and indeed we were abiding by the ceasefire, and unfortunately these terrorists, under the cover of the humanitarian recess, took full advantage of that and sacked our forces.
Let me read you a little more of this Hamas statement. It says that they call you the enemy. The enemy's army moved its vehicles and soldiers and advanced within the territory of the Gaza Strip. In the depth of Rafah at 6:30 in the morning, it advanced 2,400 meters. So the Palestinian resistance repelled the infiltrating forces and engaged in clashes with them. Your troops then, once again, you're denying categorically that you didn't cross your defensive line.
We have to operate.
Now, this incident occurred, the ceasefire went into effect at 8 a.m. local time this morning. What time did this incident occur, the killing of the 2 Israeli soldiers and the taking of the 1 Israeli soldier prisoner?
9:30 this morning.
So that's an hour and a half after the ceasefire went in effect.
I'm saying this is lie after lie after lie, from the beginning of the time that they're stating till the end of the scenario that they are describing. Everything they are doing from the beginning of this operation till this day is full of lies. You have to be very cautious with what they are telling you. I can tell you, the IDF this morning was holding its fire, sitting on its hands, hoping to de-escalate the situation. This terrorist organization that has no regard for any life, human or others, is going and operating, exasperating, and increasing the aggression on the state of Israel. We had 20 more rockets over the course of the day launched from Gaza. We have a soldier that's been abducted and two soldiers that were killed in the ceasefire.
Forgive me, I don't want the rhetoric. I'm looking for fact here at the moment. What you say that the Israeli military was sitting on its hands. There weren't any tunnel operations going on at the time. You weren't destroying tunnels. You weren't neutralizing tunnels, as you call them.
We were destroying tunnels. That was a part of the understandings that we will continue to demolish and decommission these tunnels, which, as proven today, are a substantial threat. That was all part of the agreement. This is what was declared on. This is what was agreed upon by all parties. But Hamas, the situation, aggravated it further and abducted a soldier, an officer, a young officer, and killed two more.
Peter, so was this a badly worded ceasefire? Was it just asking for trouble?
No, Hamas is a badly unrespectable, somebody you cannot commit to, cannot depend on them to carry out any sort of agreement. This organization has one thing in mind. It only wants to wreak havoc on the region.
Peter, tell us more, if you can, please, while we've got you, about the circumstances in which the Israeli soldier went missing.
Indeed, as I pointed out, the forces were operating in order to decommission the tunnel. During that activity, a suicide bomber came out of a tunnel. I'm not certain it was the same tunnel, and another gunman came out of a tunnel. The suicide bomber blew himself up, killing two on the spot, two soldiers, and abducting HADAR, GOLDIN, into the tunnel, seeking refuge into that tunnel again.
And I'm assuming, Peter, that you've now launched an operation to try to recover him.
We are attempting to pursue the perpetrators of this attack, indeed.
Peter, good to talk to you. Many thanks indeed. That's Peter Lerner, the spokesman for the Israeli army, on the line there. James Bays, who's in West Jerusalem. Peter, James, I put it to Peter just then that this was a badly worded ceasefire deal, wasn't it? It was just asking for trouble.
Well, I think they spent a lot of time trying to come up with the ceasefire words, something that both sides would agree to. So that's the difficulty, of course. You try and find some wording that you can get everyone to sign up to. And I think in some ways the wording was a little ambiguous. When you look at the actual wording of the text that was released by the United Nations, it actually gives no details at all about what the Israeli military were allowed to do in this ceasefire period, other than the fact that they were allowed to stay in place. It was John Kerry, when he spoke to reporters in India, the US Secretary of State, said that in his view they were allowed to continue defensive operations behind their front lines, behind the point where they had got to. That, of course, then begs the question, and you were asking the spokesman of the Israeli military a short time about it, whether the Israeli military had actually advanced from where they were, whether they had gone forward, because that, it seems, would be a breach of John Kerry's understanding of this wording, John Kerry's understanding of the agreement that was in place for this 72-hour humanitarian pause, Adrian.
And James, you heard me talking to Peter Lerner about the soldier that the Israeli military suspects has been abducted, that is missing at the moment. They've mounted an operation to try to recover him. How will that be seen there? It will be seen in Israel.
Well, I think it's going to be how it's going to be seen by the public in Israel, and then how that is going to play into the political decisions that will be made. I think there is anger already in Israel. There's already visuals taking place. There's already a great deal of activity on social media. How will the Israeli leadership respond? One clue, we've had a phone call between Prime Minister Netanyahu and Secretary of State John Kerry. Let me just read you one line from this. It says that the Palestinians unilaterally and grossly violated the humanitarian ceasefire and attacked our soldiers, and Prime Minister Netanyahu goes on, the consequences of the it says the terrorist organisations, as they describe them, will bear the consequences of their actions, and Israel will take all necessary steps for those who call for our destruction. And we'll see quite what those steps are, I think, in just over an hour's time now, Adrian, because we're hearing that there is a meeting of Israel's Security Cabinet likely to take place where they'll discuss their next move, and most people here are speculating that it'll be some form of escalation.
James, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas says that a united Palestinian delegation will travel to Cairo tomorrow, quote, regardless of any unexpected developments. Will this ceasefire have to be renegotiated now before they can try to implement it again?
Well, I suppose that is possibly one positive development, that trip is still going on. Whether the Egyptians are actually going to be there to greet them and whether there will be any sort of talking is not clear at this stage. Mixed messages coming from the Egyptian side. And, of course, the Israeli delegation will only depart from Tel Aviv airport and head to Cairo if they get the go-ahead from Prime Minister Netanyahu. Again, I think we wait for that Security Cabinet meeting.
Israeli forces launch fresh deadly attacks against Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Israel has targeted several areas across the besieged enclave, including the town of Rafah. Over 50 Palestinians were killed and more than 250 were injured as Israel shelled a shopping center in Rafah. Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital is being evacuated after Israel threatened to attack the compound. The attacks came after the Israeli army officially announced that a ceasefire with Hamas is over. Israel unilaterally ended the ceasefire shortly after it took effect at 500 hours GMT. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accused Palestinian resistance groups of violating the truce, but Hamas has rejected that allegation, saying Israeli attacks on Rafah provoked retaliatory fire from resistance fighters. Over 1,500 Palestinians have been killed and thousands more injured in 25 days of Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip. An associate professor from the University of Wisconsin says America's stance on the capture of the Israeli soldier shows a typical colonial behavior.
The White House's statement is preposterous, actually, and basically, this is a very typical settler colonial behavior that they expect the colonized just to sit around and receive the killing and thank them for the genocide they're actually committing in Gaza. We've seen that in all the cases of settler colonialism, and the United States, the administration in the United States is just repeating the classical statements that this is the role of the colonized. Regardless, if we actually follow the same statements from the Israeli soldiers in the field, those who are posting on Twitter that they killed 11 children and killed 12 children and they're going to kill more and more, they also show surprised how dare those Palestinians that were killing respond to us and defend themselves. In their dictionary, only the Israelis have the right to defend themselves, although nobody attacked them. Again, this is really preposterous from the United States administration. Although until yesterday or the day before, we've seen some shy criticisms from the United States, from the White House, regarding the murdering of the civilians in Gaza, despite the fact that they still kind of defend Israel's so-called right to defend itself. But we will continue to see this. The United States is a partner in this massacre that is actually taking place in Gaza. The United States is financing this. The United States is supporting this with weapons and arms.